Joining us is Larry Wenderuesz, who is beginning his 8th season at the helm of the Mississippi Rock Rockets. And, Coach, 8 years, time has definitely flown, hasn't it?
It really has. The funny part is I was just talking to somebody about that, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have any idea how many years I have been up there. I said they roll together, and you have fun with it, and it really does just fly to the point that you don't keep track of how many years.
You're coming off a very good season in a very, very tough region. You got to the District 10 championship game, and you won a couple playoff games last year. I mean, overall, maybe not the finish you hoped for, but still a pretty good season.
Yeah, and I think when you in the moment you look at it and you're disappointed with the end result. But again, there's two teams in your district that did to say you play in a District 10 title game, and we've been fortunate now for 2 years in a row to be one of those two teams. And we talk about expectations and what the expectations are becoming around here, and that's something that this team has to now take grasp of.
And the expectations grew a lot last year and again this year when you got placed into a Region 3 that is as competitive as any league in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it really is. And, when you take a look week in and week out and the different teams and schemes that you're going to see, it is one of those that you don't get an off week. And, when you take a look at stuff like that, the biggest part in my mind is can you stay healthy through that entire season? And the team that stays the healthiest usually is the team that's going to end up playing in that championship game one way or another.
I'm sure it was a little bit mixed emotions when you started on Monday with your team, when you came to the field and you didn't see William Mokel or John Sabo or Maddox Allen or Isaac Bell or Brody Gelsick. The list goes on and on. I mean, that was a great group of players that you had that won a lot of games for you.
Yeah, it really was, and I think you take two. You combine those 2 years in a row. I mean, I think the year before when you had a Ryan Montgomery and you had a Shane Thompson and a Tony Pelosi and a Trent Duncan and Dylan. We had two classes in a row that were very talented and took a lot of snaps 2 years in a row from a lot of kids, and but the part of coaching any team at any level is change is inevitable. You're going to have those changes. And one of the philosophies I've learned a long time ago is you coach tomorrow's kids today. And I hope that we've done a good job of that the last several years, because last year's tomorrow's teams are this year's today's.
What's the challenge of trying to fill some of those shoes? And you've been working on it here in the off season and this week and of course, going into next week.
Well, I think the biggest, one of the biggest pieces is our kids understanding the outside expectations don't always match your interior or your team expectations. And again, when you take a look at what the snaps that group took, that's a lot of snaps. But what people didn't see were some of these guys that were working their tails off at practice that were fighting against those guys that became better because they were going against a Brody Gelsick or a Braden Rich or covering a John Sabo. And now those guys have worked so hard over the years to do those things that now it's their time to go out and show that they could block a Brett Gelsick or they could tackle a Maddox Allen and do that on somebody different than our own team.
What's the strength of your team at this point?
You know what? I don't even look at X's and O's, and I don't look at the kids, what they can do on the field or whatnot. Honestly, our strength right now is we're having practices that are competitive. And it's a practice where our young bucks are jumping in drills and they're competing for spots, and they know that. And when you have that opportunity to compete, your practices become more competitive. And I think that's what we're looking at as a strength is every rep has a sense of urgency because we just don't know what the next one's going to bring. And as we continue to do that, we'll continue to clear up the water as to guys that are going to be on the field and not on the field with everything that we're doing.
The old saying goes, Coach, is that winning breeds winning, success breeds success. How has the last few years' success helped build this program?
Well, we just talked about expectations, and I think when you raise expectations, your job as a coach is to make sure they understand the expectations and you're doing the things in the off season and the in season that they understand and that they can reach those expectations. You know, the better and best coaches that are out there are those guys that can push players to positions or abilities where they didn't believe they could reach. And with our expectations, some of our kids may look at those and say, we can't do that. And it's our job to get them to that point. And it has changed our program's expectations. And we're going to continue to try to reach those expectations or meet those expectations.
Put them down.
Coach, you open up with General McLean on Friday the 25th. Just a thought about taking on the Lancers.
You know what? I'll be honest. I haven't even looked. And I learned from a coach years ago that we're always playing that faceless opponent. And especially at week 0, you never know what the other team's going to do. And so we just got to control what we can control. And that is, you know, we'll do what we do better than they do what they do. And that's really the mentality that we have to have at that point.
Have you filled the slot at quarterback yet? I know other programs and coaches I've talked to are still taking some time and using training camp to get that important slot filled. Have you decided who will replace William Mokel?
Well, I think that's always been. We had a young man in Eli Anderson last year that was really in the shoes of. At times, do we throw him back there to do some things that he's very talented at? And Eli has had a real nice week at camp right now. Eli was a young man that we moved to wide receiver for a little bit last year, and he was doing some really good things, and then he broke his collarbone. So we lost him for a while. So, you know, right now he's our guy at the quarterback position, and you know, we're in a good spot moving forward.
Coach, lastly, what will surprise people about this Sippy Rock Rocket team of 2023 from your mind?
Well, I'm hoping and I believe that it's just a different mentality with us as a competitive nature, play in and play out. And, you know, again, I believe when you looked at some of these kids last year, they knew who was the ones because they had been there the year before. This year, that guaranteed one's not there. So the competitiveness of this team in and out, we believe and we expect to be the mainstay of who we are this year.
Coach, we appreciate your time. Have a great final week of practice, and I hope you have a great season, a successful and healthy season. I'm sure we will cross paths.
Sounds great, Bob. I appreciate it.